Okay, so can we start? Yeah. Hello everybody. Hello everybody who is here in our audience, in our class at Stockholm School of Economics in St. Petersburg, and hello everybody who is watching us via broadcast. I'm happy to open our webinar tonight, and we have our honored guest, Brent McKenzie here with the topic shopper marketing. I'll tell you a little secret. Brent came actually, of course, for the webinar, but the secondary thing he came for is his participating in our defense committee tomorrow with GM14 group. So if someone from GM14 is online, then you could say hello to Brent. Maybe just help me to get introduced to him. But anyway, he will be tomorrow just acting as examinator. But I would like to thank Brent for giving us the opportunity to speak in front of us tonight and combine the defense activity with this webinar for our alumni. Okay, Brent, would you please introduce yourself a little bit more and talk about the experience before you start?
Okay.
Following topic.
Thank you, Igor. Welcome here in the room and all you online. I'm a marketing professor at the University of Guelph in Canada. Guelph is about 100 kilometers west of Toronto. For those of you who may know Canada, it's 11 in the morning back at home, and I arrived here in St. Petersburg yesterday, so I'm a little bit off on time. But I'm very honored to be able to have this opportunity to share some of the research and ideas that I've been working on for a while in the field of retailing, specifically this topic of shopper marketing. So for the next, I think, 40 minutes or so, I'm going to go through the presentation on this area, and understanding we'll have some time for questions and some discussion at the end there. Being here in Russia, I was going to make a comment about hockey, but we still know Canada has the best hockey team, so I will start from there. I had to say it, sorry. So today we're going to talk about shopper marketing, and for those of you who are somewhat familiar with the topic or just learning about it tonight, it's a field of research that is fairly recent. In most of most of the field of retailing, particularly in North America, it's only a couple of years old. I'm going to present a short case study about category management, which is kind of a predecessor to shopper marketing. And then I'm going to present some ideas and thoughts about why shopper marketing is very important for retailers moving ahead, as well as some of the challenges. And then, as I mentioned, we will have a chance for some discussion near the end of the presentation. I'd like to start with this slide about why do people go shopping. We all have our own ideas of expectations we have when we go shopping, but I like this where it said I buy things I don't need with money I don't have to impress people I don't like. So if we're starting with that premise about what shopping is, it's often very difficult to understand our shoppers or our consumers. So why are they doing what they're doing? And shopper marketing is hopefully providing us, particularly in retailing, some better ideas on what our people are doing when we go shopping. This slide here is just mentioning about traditional retailing. So there's nothing really new or exciting here, but it just gives us a sense of what are the types of things that retailers need to focus on. So obviously we focus on our target customer. So nothing new there. And we've looked at a number of things over time, such as consumer behavior, the prices that we charge, the types of products that we have, etc. And in probably the last 10 or 15 years, a lot of retailers have spent more time and effort to try and understand what the customers think about them. And in today's marketplace, with the growth of social media, consumers and shoppers are very much not shy on telling a retailer what they think. Hopefully they're doing well, but more importantly, they often tell retailers what they don't like about their stores. So this is kind of where we're building from. The areas or types of strategies that retailers have historically kind of looked at. Once again, when we talk about products, so what types of products should we sell in a store? I've used the term category killers or specialty shops. So again, over the last 10 or 15 years, you've seen the growth of retailers that focus on one thing. So either electronics or things like hardware. An example in Canada specifically, when some of the large home improvement stores like Home Depot came to Canada, you could now, instead of choose from 4 or 5 hammers, now you can choose from 25. The growth of technology has been very important in retailing, particularly the type of information that retailers can now collect about all their shoppers through the checkout process, but the bar cards and, as I said, technology that's used within the store. Loyalty. We always talk about loyalty. I would argue a lot of retailers think they have loyal customers, but then when you ask them, why do you think they're loyal? Well, they keep shopping at my store, is always their answer. So shopper marketing is trying to get us to a greater understanding of what is it our customers are truly doing when they either come or don't come to our store. And then finally, things like customer service. Take good care of your people, and your people will take care of your customers. What I'm trying to highlight there is, I'm sure it's very similar here in Russia that it is in Canada. Unfortunately, a lot of times people working in retailing, particularly in the retail stores, may not, let's say, get treated as well as maybe they should be. And there's been a lot of research saying the better you treat your retail employees, the better they're in turn going to treat your customers. Just a word cloud here, but part of this process of getting into this thing called shopper marketing is trying to understand what is it consumers are concerned about. And we use this thing of consumer confidence. So the more confident consumers are, particularly confident in the future, generally they're more willing to spend their money and to do more shopping. This is just highlighting some global statistics, the UK and the EU. So we've come out of the economic crisis in the late aughts, I guess we call them, 2008 onwards. So people generally are a little more confident in what the future may bring, particularly compared to the past. And that has a direct impact on how retailing should perform. I apologize here, it's just a Canadian-US chart, but the reason I feel this is important is, depending on which country or region you're in, the confidence of your consumers may be similar to neighboring countries. So again, if we look at perspective from Russia, so how is the Russian economy going versus the Central and Western European economies going, and can you learn something from those trends? So in our case, we tend to generally mirror what's going on in the United States. Other things to look at are the sales themselves. So although retail sales have continually climbed, particularly in Canada over time, the question is, where's the profitability? And retailing, I would always argue, is one of the simplest businesses in the world. You buy some products and you sell them at a profit. That's generally what retailing is. But obviously it becomes much more complicated the more competition you have, and the more, let's say, sophisticated or involved your customers are. Yes?
Is the e-commerce?
Just
general retail?
The one on the left is, sorry, the one in the black bars is e-commerce, and the other one is just regular overall retail. Thank you. So shopper marketing. So the first question is, well, what is it? It's a nice, easy to say term. It's about shoppers and about marketing. Sure. So this one quotation that I have here, like, shopper marketing is the most exciting approach to marketing today. I'm a marketing professor. I often smile when I read these things. So, well, okay, it's exciting. That's nice. So what? So the point is saying, can we understand more about our shoppers? And I'm going to get into what's the difference between a shopper and a customer. Again, this is just a high-level chart to kind of explain how can you create a shopper marketing program. I'm not going to spend much time on this because I think we have to go back, or the hope is to go back and say, what do we first need to know before we develop plans and programs about shopper marketing? Excuse me. Well, if you want to look at what shopper marketing is truly about, it's an intersection. And this triangle is specifically on its pointy end, if you will. So what we're saying here is between the shopper, the retailer, and the brand. And the brand can be the brand of the retailer or the brand of the products that the retailer is selling. They have to be in balance. So we're looking at this intersection. I'm saying, how do we bring the information from these three groups together and better understand our shoppers and there hopefully improve our job at retail? If you do some searches on the web or in the literature, there's more and more mention of shopper marketing. And obviously, as an academic, we tend to look at things sometimes in a different perspective from industry. We're saying, well, we want to understand why this concept is, what it's about, and how do we better understand it. Versus oftentimes in industry, you're saying, okay, this is shopper marketing, sounds pretty exciting. Other companies are talking about it, they're writing about it in the popular press. Well, maybe we should be doing it as well. But hopefully you'll take away from this discussion that maybe we don't know that much about it. So as recently as 2011 in the Journal of Retailing, which arguably is the top academic journal in the field of retailing, it was viewed as one of the major areas for research in the future. Well, why was that? Was it just because industry was talking about this thing called shopper marketing? Or was it really something that needed to be studied in greater detail? So what we're trying to say here is saying sometimes we like to think ourselves in academia are leading some of the discussions, but I'll be honest, in an area like retailing, it's often the retailers are doing things, and then we have the opportunity to maybe analyze them in greater detail, saying, well, what is really going on here? So kind of understanding the background of some of the practices. So the term itself is evolving. As I said, it's easy to say, it's easy to have some idea, as I said, it's something about marketing, it's something about shoppers. But it's kind of a way to better understand our shopper. And when I say better understand our shopper, first of all, you have to say, well, why do we need to know this? So I mentioned here a holistic approach. So really what we're looking at in shopper marketing is the whole shopping experience, again, from the consumer standpoint. So instead of looking at the individual actions, we're trying to get an overall view of what a shopper is. And as I said, some of you may be thinking, well, obviously I'm a retailer, I know what a shopper is. They come in my store and they buy things. But what we're trying to do is there's so many different things going on inside the store. But even more important, there's so many things going inside the consumer or shopper's head before they go to the store, once they leave the store. So you're trying to look at the whole process. Before they get to the store, in the store, when they leave the store. So not surprising, some of the major consulting firms have started exploring this topic to try and say, how do we get inside that customer's mind, or sorry, that shopper's mind? And I'm going to be precise here to make sure we're clear on the difference between a shopper and a consumer. Excuse me. So from an industry standpoint, we're saying shopper marketing is a practice, i.e. it's something that happens. Well, just because something happens doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to figure out, well, why does it happen? Okay? So we're trying to market to the consumer, or the shopper. So the person who's in the store, how can we influence what they're doing? And more importantly, how can we understand what they're doing? Okay? In terms of a field of study, a couple of universities in the United States have now actually developed programs in shopper marketing. A lot of companies now are having a CMO or a chief marketing officer. And the reason they have created such senior positions in these organizations is they truly believe that understanding more and more about the shopper is going to be just as, and sometimes even more important, as what's going on in the whole business. So it's placing a higher profile on the marketing role. And again, marketing, I'm somewhat biased as a marketing professor, but certainly marketing is about understanding how are you eventually making sales with customers. I always liked, well, to be honest, I never did like Peter Drucker way back when I was doing my master's studies. I always thought it was fairly simple in terms of management jargon. But when you start going back to it, it's basically marketing and innovation. So although Peter Drucker never said marketing, quote, was that important, marketing was part of management. In fact, marketing is management. So trying to get a better understanding of how you make the sale with your customers. Other things, and I'm kind of taking a step back here, is we have a number of things that now fall into shopper marketing. So originally we didn't necessarily say them, but we had things like in-store promotions, like the types of displays you have in the store, the layout of the store. All these things are still critically important, but now we're lumping them into this thing called shopper marketing. We're saying there's more than just doing each of these individual actions. Yes, you will still do them, but you have to have a better understanding of how they affect the whole thing in what we're calling here the shopper mode. So when someone's in the mode, the position of shopping, what else can we do with respect to them? Other things you may have seen before, and particularly, and again, I don't need to denigrate people who do consulting and retailing, but oftentimes the argument is, well, let's make a nicer store, let's change the colors in the store, let's change the lighting in the store, let's change the layout of the store. You can do all these things. And I'm not saying they're ineffective, but they're just a part of the whole. We always tell our undergraduate students that, well, why is the milk at the back of the grocery store? So someone has to wander through the whole store, or supermarket, sorry, to buy that milk, and they're going to walk by other products on the way. Well, most people understand that, and they realize, well, that's just the way the store is designed. So if people now understand some of these practices that retailers have been doing in the past, well, that's not good enough anymore. We often call this table stakes. Everybody's doing it. Well, then there's no real way to distinguish your performance from your competitors if you're all doing the same sort of things. There is an in-store marketing institute out of the United States, and particularly focused on the grocery industry. But even they're talking about shopper marketing has to be cross-functional. It can't solely be the realm of us marketers. It really does affect the different parts of the organization. Okay, so consumer marketing tells consumers what to think. Shopper marketing tells shoppers what to do. And again, it's not as simple as saying, shopper, you should do this. But it's creating a package of activities, practices, techniques that ultimately is not trying to tell the customer what to think, but what to do. Intuitively, particularly people who have studied a lot of marketing, saying, well, no, the customer, I believe over here we used to call the client is king. We say the customer is king, or the customer is always right. But in fact, shopper marketing is pushing back on that, saying, in fact, we're going to help you determine how you should think. And again, it's not necessarily an overt way to do it, but we need to have more influence on what our customers are doing. So this is kind of, these would be examples of some of the pillars or background of what I'm calling shopper marketing. And I thought there'd be some value here to present a discussion of just a short case study talking about category management. Because category management, and I've had the opportunity to do some lectures on this, particularly in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. But category management is one of those things that still has some opportunities for retailers. But it's certainly something that any company or retailer that wants to be involved in shopper marketing needs to be able to focus on. So the example I'm going to talk about is a company called Canadian Tire. Not surprisingly, it's Canadian. Surprisingly, though, it's not just about tires. So Canadian Tire is a large retailer in Canada, over 450 stores. They also have stores that just sell card operation. They have some gas bars, and they also have another chain of clothing stores called Mark Worth Warehouse. So the reason I wanted to talk about Canadian Tire is it's probably one of the best examples of a retailer that sells so many different types of products that it's even more critical for them to understand the customer or shopper and how the shopper looks at their product. So from a category management standpoint, they've set some objectives of how they're going to do this. So part of what we're going to talk about here is how do you link your marketing strategy to your category strategy. So when we talk about categories, we're saying groups of products that consumers or shoppers kind of group together. If you, again, think of the grocery business, if you go to the snack aisle, where you have your salty snacks, your sweet snacks, your chips, your pretzels, all those sort of things, you may have some dip for your chips, you may have some soda or pop in the area. So you're starting to group products together. That's what we're talking about here in category management. So what they've designed or what they've used, and you have to picture about this, I don't know if any of you have ever seen the movie This Is Spinal Tap, but it was a satirical movie about the music industry years ago, sorry. And one of the guitarists in this movie said his amplifier went to 11 versus every other amplifier only went to 10. And his point was, well, mine's louder than anyone else because it goes to 11. But what we're saying here, these are knobs, if you want to look at it. So you can vary different things. So instead of setting a marketing strategy that looks at merchandising, product development, pricing, etc., you have to view them as individual components that work together. So if you think about it, what the whole essence here, we're talking about a category strategy versus a marketing strategy, is the marketing strategy is at the organizational level, and the category strategy is at a lower level, but it needs to still adjust all these certain levers. Hopefully this will be a little clearer as we move ahead, but I wanted you to get a sense of saying, how does this help a retailer understand where they should focus their activities? So as well as the things that are involved from a marketing perspective, you also have your sales, your margin, your inventory, some financial areas that you're looking at, and obviously the company's financial plan. So what we're trying to build here is a picture from the low level of what happens in the category to the larger level of what the organization is doing. So then you also have your vendors, the corporation is the company here, and then also the stores themselves. So we're making this more complicated as we add more players together. But you can still go back to the marketing functions need to be controlled. Excuse me. And then finally, the customers. So it may seem counterintuitive that now we're talking about the customers. But what we're saying here is the structure of the organization, this component here being category management, needs to be in place first before you can see how does this interact with your customers. So from this process, what is it you have to do? Well, you have to do a lot of pre-work and saying, well, which merchandise is most important to our organization? You have to figure out what is the role of that category. When I say something like a role, is it a profit driver? Is it a traffic driver? Is it something that is critical for your organization and your competitors it's very competitive? What's going on in your marketplace? What things are we going to measure? How does it relate to marketing strategy? And then ultimately, what resources do we require to be able to work or to operate in our category management? So the example here is saying, in the entire standpoint, you could look at the automotive division. So the automotive division would have different types of business. So parts, tires, and service. Custom and performance would be customized parts for your organization. Car care would be like cleaning products, chamois, and those sort of things. And then it breaks down to a lower and lower level. So this is kind of the first step when you're looking at category management, saying what things are grouped together. In terms of the role, we have the consumer role, the shopping role, and the retailer role. So the reason we do that is saying we're trying to better understand why is it that a customer is coming to our store versus a competitor. So, and again, this automotive example, a consumer role would be they're coming to your store because they have an activity that they're working on. So maybe they're working on their own car, so that's why they're coming. The shopping role is, okay, all our cars maybe need windshield washer fluid, so they just happen to be at Canadian Tire anyhow, so it's a convenience good. And then the retail role is, how does this customer or the shopper coming to our store affect our business? So in this case, it can be driving traffic. So you could argue at some point that customer could be all three of those roles, generally not at the same time. But as an organization, you need to start being able to slot them into these categories because they have a very different impact on your overall business if they're playing the role of a consumer, a shopper, or the overall retailing role. So the next step here is to say, how do we link these things together? So going back to one of the earlier slides, they're saying, well, the category roles, the environmental analysis, and the performance measures, you have to start linking these together. Just to step back, when we're talking about strategy, we're talking the overall focus of the organization. Now we're kind of getting into tactics to implement that strategy. And then ultimately saying, how are we going to measure if we're good or bad at that strategy? So at the end of the day, by using category management, you're saying you've got to ensure, or this is your internal checklist, saying, does this fit with what our marketing strategy is? How does this align with where our company is going? The finance types are often quite concerned about this. How are we going to allocate our resources, in this case for a category versus other parts of an organization? How does this affect our plan? And then basically, from an internal standpoint, is this going to have some impact on how we can compensate our employees? So each one of these areas are kind of looked at in isolation and then together. So these slides here, there's nothing really earth-shattering here, but it's trying to give, again, an understanding of if we are successful in our category management activities, what is going to happen with our overall organization success. So the specific one here is looking at this thing, category of patio furniture. Patio furniture probably, or outdoor furniture, probably not the best topic to be talking about in the end of November, but certainly it's one of those easy to understand products, but it's also can be a very complicated product to understand of what the customers or shoppers are thinking about when they're looking at purchasing patio furniture. So one thing you can have is you have a display in your store. So you actually show what this product looks like. And again, this is a category though, because you have some chairs, you have tables, you could have outdoor plates and cutlery and things like that, but you actually put a display. So that gives the customer or potential shopper an idea about what it would look like. The other thing is you put it in your flyers or your advertising program. So again, somewhat similar as the last slide, you're showing the tables and chairs, but now you're putting in the context of promoting. So this would be a type of product in Canada particularly you would either start promoting, say, in April or May, just before the summer season is coming. And then the next part is you'd have what Canadian Tire calls an inspirational book. So this is not just about the products, but the different ways you could use these products. So if you think about patio furniture, well, you may have a barbecue or a grill in the backyard as well. You may have a garden. So you're starting to place the product in a larger area. And again, these would be other products, in this case, that Canadian Tire would sell at their stores. And then they have a microsite. So on their website, they have an e-commerce program as well. They would have something about, in this case, patio furniture there as well. So this would be the opportunity to provide the potential shopper a lot more background about these products and choices. And then this is quite an interesting feature they would have. It's almost like the potential shopper can have their own blueprint. And saying, well, this is kind of the size of my backyard. I have some trees there or plants or whatever. Well, where would I put my patio furniture? How would I put it? So the customer can come to the website and start designing their own look for these products. And this is going to be how, in this case, Canadian Tire not only gives the customers more value for shopping with them, but also they can track this information. Saying how many customers visited here, but what kind of things did they do when they went to this site? Okay. So this case, again, one particular retailer, a very narrow category that we're talking about, it's saying they've been quite successful in a number of the operational things. But where it's kind of still developing is saying, how do we link other players into this? How do we get our suppliers, or our vendors in this case, on side? Maybe they could run some of these websites. Maybe they could manage some of this for us. So why I wanted to talk about this case study of category management is this is very much leading us into the more involved area of shopper marketing. So shopper marketing, as depicted here, is linking consumer marketing and shopper marketing. And that's why I want us to be very clear that a shopper all shoppers are consumers, but all consumers may not be shoppers. Okay? So it's trying to understand the similarities and the overlap between these things. So this goes back to one of my earlier points of saying it's not just what's happening in the store. You need to understand what's going on, what we're calling here the pre-shop, i.e. before they go shopping, and then also the post-shop. And post-shop is one of those areas where, once again, social marketing is becoming quite relevant because people share their experience. Things that influence their purchases, family, culture, reference group. None of these things are new, but you need to be able to understand these for your shoppers because you want to know how your shoppers shop. Do they shop as a family? Does their cultural background have an influence on how they shop? And then who else are the reference groups? This is often used in fashion, particularly young people. It's often more important who they're shopping with rather than actually what they're thinking about in terms of products. This estimation of lifetime value. Some of these measures are still kind of fuzzy. They're nice to say, but basically if you have a 25-year-old shopper, are they going to be one of your customers for the next 30 years? Well, how can you calculate that value? And yes, you can create algorithms and measures to do this, but really, how accurate is that? Okay? And then we could also say, even from other credit cards or other loyalty programs, we know how often they shop. But does that really give us the information we need to understand why they're shopping, as opposed to just what they've done? So this differentiation between shoppers and consumers. So as I said, we can segment shoppers like we've done historically in a lot of areas of consumer behavior, but how does that account for things like, for instance, impulse buying? Can we predict this? Jury's still out on some of that stuff. When we look at consumers, and I'm sure a number of you have in this program and graduates have obviously studied consumer behavior. We have lots of models of how we understand consumers. We have lots of ways to segment consumers. So none of that is new. We've studied consumers' minds now. There's neural marketing that actually looks at brain waves of what consumers are doing when they're thinking about shopping. Interesting stuff, but maybe not the most practical for an actual retailer. So the shopper, it's the person in the store doing the buying. That's what it is. And again, none of this is new. We all know we have shoppers. But what can we do to maybe get them to, I have to be careful, but it's not to say we want them to shop more. I'm sure we like that. But it's understanding more about them as a shopper. This statistic quoted that 2.5 seconds can be as short as the time that a person goes from being a consumer to a shopper. They say, yep, I'm going to buy something. And oftentimes, in this case, they're already in the store. So what can we do? 70% of consumers often make their decision in the store. So how can we know more before they get that store that may make us their store or destination? So we have to add this thing of value. And as I mentioned, we tend to throw this word value around a lot, but value is something the customer decides or the shopper decides. We can create things that we think are of value, but ultimately we can't determine is it valuable or not. Only the shopper can determine that. So if you looked at historic patterns, I would argue today's shoppers are very different than their predecessors. Because again, the amount of information and variety of information they have at their fingertips, literally, with smartphones, is vastly different. So we're saying, how do we understand what they're doing? It's no longer can we look at the trends of the past. So there are examples, again, in store, tools, but the point is you need to understand why am I creating this tool versus another tool? Because I need to understand, is this the kind of tool that a shopper is going to be affected by? So in terms of changing behavior in the shoppers, so you want to repeat the behavior. Sometimes you want to change it. You want to get them to spend more time in the stores. You want them to come to the store more often, and you want them to sell them more when they're in the store. All these are separate items. One shopper could be all of these at some time. The question is, how do you better know which role they're playing when they come to your store? So From a theoretical standpoint, again, this is from our academic side, there hasn't been a lot of research on this. People refer to much shopper marketing, but compared to the over 1,700 industry publications that have talked about this, we're still trying to figure this stuff out. So as I said, our perspective is more, we need to understand this. We can't just say do it and throw this term shopper marketing on. As to be better retailers, you kind of understand what's going on. So as I said, there is more focus on formalizing some of these things in terms of the types of research, looking at more research in stores. So again, I know retailers sometimes don't want to either spend the time or money on this kind of research, but hopefully that's what we're here to spend some time on. But there are ethics involved, because a lot of this is about collecting more and more information. And when I say information, about behavior. So again, from a Canadian perspective, we have certain rules and regulations on what you can and cannot share about consumers or identify in terms of consumers. Shopper marketing really is dependent upon understanding specific shoppers. So as I said, you need to be a little cautious on some of these things. Some of the traditional things we've talked about before, like the atmosphere, the environment in the store, these things are still important, but they're understanding how do those interact with other activities going on. Just a little background about things like aroma in a store. I mean, we always think of movie theaters, popcorn involves the big smell. When the Canadian Tire store I mentioned before, when they moved to bigger stores, people said it doesn't smell like a Canadian Tire store anymore. They didn't understand what that meant. Well, the whole point was in smaller stores, you literally could smell the rubber of tires. So people identified that with your brand in your store, and that meant something. You wouldn't generally measure things like that. By looking at these different categories, you start getting a better understanding of what are the things that are key to your shoppers, sorry. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on some of this theory, but as I said, even retailers, I would suggest you need to spend a little bit of time understanding what are the academics doing. Yes, it sounds self-serving, but just saying you're doing shopper marketing and doing a bunch of activities that, quote, are part of shopper marketing isn't going to be as effective if you understand what is going on in terms of what a shopper is doing. I like this one here about mental budgets. Again, understanding if the customer already has a budget when they go to the store, this is different than a shopping list. So they expect to spend so much when they come to your store. It'd be great to know that, because you can then therefore design the types of products that they may be looking at. Again, just the challenges right now is trying to model some of these things. Yes, you can film customers. Yes, you can ask them things, but there's still a gap there. So trying to understand how do we learn more and more about this. Just a couple things that have been looked at. Things like heavy traffic does not equate to highest sales, i.e., just because you have lots of people in your store doesn't mean you're making a lot of sales. So instead of focusing solely on getting more people to your shop, maybe it's more important to get the right people to your shop. And in fact, maybe getting them there and having them spend more time is what you should be focusing on, as opposed to just getting more and more customers to visit. As I said, there's Shopper Marketing Magazine, if you're interested in looking at some of these things and what stores are doing. Other things too is, this is a hot topic. The consumer packaged goods companies are getting in on it as well, because that information is as key to them as it is to the actual retailer. So trying to see some kind of overlap or greater collaboration between your manufacturers and vendors and your retailers themselves. Again, there is this Marketing Institute, if you're interested in finding more about what they do. This whole process of what a customer is doing, from awareness to buying to consumption. It may seem fairly linear, and yes, we look at it that way. But part of it is trying to get a better understanding of how can we compartmentalize this type of analysis for our shoppers. I want to really stress the point, you have to focus on shopper marketing from your type of retailer. Yes, you may learn things from other types of retailer, but it really does have to be solely focused on your kind of retailing, because it's your shoppers you're trying to understand. Companies have started to come up with technology to provide retailers to collect some of this information and data. Again, I'm not here really to promote anyone or not, but there are tools out there. I found this very interesting, a recent posting for a strategic shopper marketing planner. So this is out of the UK. So companies are now looking for staff and employees that can figure this stuff out. So this may be something that's great too for the SSER here, is maybe some of your students would like to get into this field because at this point it is a growing area, and those that are, quote, experts shopper marketing may have some great opportunities in the future. Going back again, and I don't mean to bounce back and forth between the good and the bad, but shoppers are different. So just understanding the practice of what shoppers are doing is not understanding shopper marketing. Metrics, metrics, metrics. You can do as many as you want, but you need to make sure you're measuring the right stuff. Nothing new there. But certainly things you look at. So things we may not have looked at before. Things like target rating points or in-store rating points, i.e. looking at how many points of contact or things that a shopper does in your store. Changing the store itself. Example here in the United States of a supermarket. Warmer lighting, more readable product labels. As someone who seems to be aging very quickly, the font size on products now is becoming very important. Being able to see what's on these things. So you don't necessarily see these things as key, but these things may explain why a shopper is coming to your store versus other ones. The types of data as well that you find in there. With things like Google Glasses and things, yes, you can have more information provided to you, but as I say, you got to be careful of some of the ethical and legal aspects of doing this. So at the end of the day, we've talked about consumers and shoppers. Yes, there's some similarity there, but they are different. So what I really hope you can kind of take away from this kind of quick discussion is it's understanding shoppers. You should already be fairly good at understanding consumers. Shopper marketing is just a greater step. Just a couple of short things here. Adding things like messages on cart handles. So you're now trying to target a person in the store. In North America, the big challenge is this: people steal shopping carts all the time. I don't know why, particularly in a university town. University students like to walk home with a shopping cart. But you can start providing greater information to your shopper when they're in the store. But at the end of the day, some of these fundamentals are not changing. It's about data, it's about tools, it's about insight. It's trying to understand more and more about your shopper. And there is collaboration. As I said, it's not great to kind of copy what other retailers are doing, but again, collaborating with your suppliers, working with your industry groups to see what are some of the best practices in this field to get some insight for your organization. And basically, retailers themselves, particularly the ones I'm more familiar with in North America, they're spending more money on this. And retailers aren't stupid. If they're spending money on something, their expectation is there's got to be something there. They truly believe that there is going to be greater information, greater understanding, and hopefully they're better shoppers for their retailer. So I realize I went through a fair bit of information in the last 45 minutes, but thank you for your time on this, and I understand we will have some time for some questions. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Brent. Yes, the floor is yours, and our broadcast audience, please post questions on chat. We'll be looking for it.
Yes, Brent, thank you. First of all, my first question is probably least relevant, but anyway, Canadian Tire is where did they get this name from, and how is it relevant to their product range?
Yes, and sorry, I apologize. Canadian Tire, you would think, is about tires. They started as automotive, but they're automotive, home products, sporting goods. They've really gone into a very wide range of categories of products within Canadian Tire. And then the corporation itself, as I mentioned, owns clothing stores, gas or petrol stations, credit card operations as well. So yes, it's a very unusual retailer because of the types of products it's carried. And why it's quite interesting to study is because it has such a wide range of products. So they focused a lot on, one of their slogans used to be what our customers value most. So they focused on this thing of value. So instead of saying, you may come when you're little, your parents might buy you a bicycle then. So instead of what they do is say, okay, maybe you'll give them a better bike when they get older. But they realize, well, that person's going to get older, become a parent, so let's get them customer for life kind of thing. And they tried to understand them as their shopping behavior at Canadian Tire. So a little long definition.
Okay. Tire is not for wheels, it's just...
Yeah, they do sell them as well, automotive products, but it's as I said, they have sporting goods, housewares, tools, so it's a very wide range of products.
My second question is about CRM. Do you know good examples of using CRM for big retailers, not for B2B companies, not for insurance companies, but for retail companies where they manage to sell special offers, special goods for certain categories of customers who...
Sorry, I didn't catch the first word there.
CRM, customer relation.
Oh, okay. Again, any of the either what I call category killers or specific narrow retailers, I haven't really done a lot of work in those areas. I've been looking at more broad type of retailers because, again, from a shopper marketing standpoint, their concern or their opportunity is the breadth of the products that they carry. I know in terms of just some work from teaching in this area, companies like Abercrombie and Fitch and kind of younger focused clothing store, they're trying to still focus on the lifestyle as opposed to the shopper. So they're looking at more the image of the brand and then the products reflect that. But they're finding more challenges in that too because younger, particularly their target customers, younger customers are changing a lot more frequently than in the past. So I would suggest something like shopper marketing is probably of value to them because they have to understand the shopper, not just the brand. So this goes back to that one slide with the triangle in. I didn't talk as much about the brand, but the brand is helping to the retailer itself shape their relationship with the shoppers.
Brent, are there some like national specifics in terms of shopper marketing? Because like North America is almost saturated, yeah, with equivalents compared to
Sorry, older century?
yeah,
Okay.
compared to like even to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned 1,700 researchers made on
Industry.
industry
Yeah.
supermarket, but what we have at the end of the day? You said we need to investigate this, that, and the third thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what do we know? And is there national specific?
Well, I mean, my belief has always been retailing and shopping is national or culturally specific. There's some things fairly universal, but others are very much dependent upon the market. So if you go back to things just hours of shopping or hours during the day when people shop in North America, say Europe, and different parts of Europe, those things already need to be understood. And I would argue the retailers in each market either are or should be very aware of their local unique aspects. I guess from a shopper marketing standpoint is what it's purporting to do is you still need to understand your shoppers because you're looking at a longer term perspective. So it may sound like we're talking about loyalty, but loyalty itself, as we often say, we measure loyalty by will you shop again here in 6 months? Will you spend more than you did this year? Will you tell your friends about your good experience? These metrics have been around for ages. The shopper part is trying to understand what are the activities that happen before they get to the store. What are the activities in the store, and then what are the activities outside the store? So I guess, again, in a long way, what I'm trying to suggest is It's just lengthening the focus on the shopper. So retailers have done a fairly good job in the store. I mentioned I went to Zoom today. I thought it was probably one of the nicest department stores I've ever seen. There weren't a lot of shoppers in it, but I mean, it was middle of the day on a Wednesday. But the staff were very. The staff, well, that's shopper marketing is pretty much dependent on shoppers.
Right.
So you can make all these fancy stores and you can have a pleasant shopping experience, but when things are very competitive, and to me, competition is driving this. I would say it's no different here than most markets. When you have competition, they're fighting each other, particularly in retail, because oftentimes you're selling the same product, and oftentimes, or at least the same brands, and often at very similar prices. So how do you distinguish yourself? I've done a fair bit of research on hypermarkets and supermarkets in Estonia. They have way too many, in my opinion, for the size of the market, because they're all doing the same thing. Similar products, similar prices, similar location. So at the end of the day, if the market's still growing, that's great. But there's going to be saturation, and there's going to be consolidation. People often ask me, well, who do you think is going to come and go? I say, that's not my place. The marketplace should know that. But intuitively, or any strategy model you look at, you can only have so many competitors doing the exact same thing. So shopper marketing is hopefully providing retailers a better understanding of the shopping behavior at their stores. It's not discounting any of the other things they've already been doing. You still have to do this stuff. This is just an added level.
More questions, please?
First of all, I would like to thank you for the explanation, the difference between shopper and consumer. It's very important.
Yes.
I never knew before. Well, and the question is, you have explained also that shopper marketing is very important for retailers.
Yes.
And how is it important for a shopper?
As an individual?
Yeah.
I'd say, again, it's great in the sense that you should be catered to more, or at least feel you're being catered to more. The great advantage nowadays of the shopper, as long as there's competition, I have no reason to be loyal to anybody. Everybody has a loyalty program. In fact, maybe I'm loyal to my credit card, not the store, because I use it in the store anyhow. So the retailers need to be clear on what is it they're really providing to me as a shopper. Why should I spend more time in the shop? Why should I go to your shop? Maybe I go to your shop less than I did before, but I'll buy more things when I go there, because I know they understand me as a shopper. Where this gets tricky, as I said, is how much am I willing to give you in terms of information about me? And that's often where the hiccup comes in terms of implementing shopper marketing, because it really is dependent on understanding shoppers. Consumers, we have groups of them, right? You can say male, female, certain age, certain income. That's a group. Shoppers are getting down to the individual level, because we're saying a shopper is different than any other shopper at some point. So you need to understand that. So as a shopper, what am I willing to give up? Well, that's still to be determined, I guess. And I guess the understanding is you need almost the ability to service your shopper in whatever way they shop, and that's why a lot of retailers do have some kind of e-commerce presence, if not an e-commerce shop, because you get to know that customer. Amazon is an interesting example as a pure online retailer, because they know so much about you, because they can collect so much more information, they can watch your clicks and things. So at this stage, I think shopper marketing is still very focused on how the retailers can better understand the shopper, but it's an excellent question. Why should I give you more information to help serve me better? Well,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Brent, we have received one question from Mikhail online. Okay. Yeah.
Dear Brent, thank you for interesting and very useful presentation. You're welcome. Can you estimate the percentage how to split marketing budget between traditional ads and shoppers-oriented activity for non-food FMCG retail company. Thank you in advance. No. Sorry, flippant answer, but I never say you should have a predetermined on how much you spend on something. Whatever you're spending on advertising should be determined on what is the goal of advertising. Again, this is an easy academic thing to say, but I hate it when people say I have X% of my budget is for promotions or advertising. I don't get it, because you shouldn't be budgeting things, the things you should be budgeting are based on expectation. So if you're using traditional advertising, you believe that's going to drive so many customers or so many sales to your store, that's what your budget is. So, Mikhail, unfortunately, I'm not giving you an answer you're probably looking for. It depends. Figure out what you're trying to do first, and the budget should be, or percentage of the budget should be drawn from that or fall from that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for the lecture. I would like to ask the thing about the atmosphere in the shop. The first question is, what do you think? What is the tendency? Are customers ready to pay more for the things if the atmosphere in the shop is very comfortable? For example, if there is a kid zone or something else they like to have inside of the shop. This is the first question. And if I may ask the second one.
Can I answer that first
yes,
so I remember? Okay. No jet lag. First of all, it's an excellent question because you would never ask the customer, right? Would you do it? The customers are never going to be willing to pay more for anything generally. But the atmosphere makes it a pleasurable experience. And if the shopper is in a pleasant experience, it shows they're willing to, at minimum, spend more time. If they're spending more time, they're probably going to spend more money in the shop. On the other hand, there's a set level that every retailer has to do. And again, I use this as table stakes. So you have to have a clean store. You have to have a store where it's easy to find things. You have to have, if it's a type of retailing where you need customer service, you need employees there to assist the customers if they need them. So that's all part of the atmosphere of the shopping experience, but I would say that's the minimum now everybody needs to do. So you can start tweaking things, and this is really the experimental part comes in. I know the classic example is we always talk about IKEA, saying you could never get in and out of an IKEA store in a half an hour even if you wanted to. They made you flow through the store because they believe the longer you spent there, the more the longer time you spend, the more you'd spend, and they have the kids zone, they have a restaurant, they have all those things. But even they've realized that you can't keep that as a strategy. So now they have the short little map where you can get in and get out, or you have an online opportunity to do that. So I think the individual retailer, in terms of the atmosphere, can play with these things, but none of them are going to be, in my opinion, none of these are going to be enduring. Because once other retailers see, okay, they're doing that and it works for them, we're going to do it as well, you've lost any kind of distinction from your competitor. So it's understanding what is the base level that no questions asked, you have to have that. And then the next thing is what are the things we can kind of change from time to time that have proven or shown or demonstrated to our shoppers that this results in them spending more time within our store. So maybe they come to our website more than they used to, or maybe they ask us more questions. I still have visited retailers that say they have really loyal customers because their customers say so, and nobody complains. So you want complaints. I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, but you want to know because they're the ones that are shopping. They have a better understanding of what their experience is than yours. So again, atmospherics is great because you can make it fairly unique to your shop, but there is no proven thing to do that's going to be more or less successful. You literally have to try something.
Second question.
Yes, and the second question
from
was
Natalia waiting on.
Also about the atmosphere. It's speaking about like $1 shops, right?
Yes.
And the main message of this kind of shops is that we sell cheap things.
Yes.
So should the atmosphere in the shop be the same, like very simple and nothing less, or if we make it more comfortable for customers, does it give them different different messages. We say that we sell cheap things, but we provide their very comfortable atmosphere and the things. No, and they think no, this shop cannot be cheap. So is it a contradiction or is okay in nowadays?
Yeah, excellent point. Question again. I mean, basically, like the dollar stores, or I've seen pound shops, and I don't know, are they ruble shops?
Yeah,
That's what they're called?
30 rubles.
Oh, 30 ruble shops. Okay.
Now it should be 50.
Once you've opened that kind of a retailer, you've kind of said we're solely competing on price. Yes, some selection, but price is the reason you should be shopping at my store. So, and you're exactly right. If you have a nicer shopping experience, the question is, are you still selling, can you afford to still sell the same products at a very low price? And generally, no. I mean, yes, you need to have a safe environment. Cleanliness is fairly important in those types of stores, but those shoppers, and this is a great point, saying they're probably not the types of shoppers that are going to look up a lot of information before they come. They're probably not going to do a lot of follow-up after they leave the store. They're very much coming to your store because of the price, and their shopping is solely what happens in that store. So yes, if it's nicer, that may make a difference, but that's not the reason they're coming. So the question is, why would you spend, I mean, again, you need a minimum standard of, as I said, cleanliness or tidiness or location of product. But other than that, it goes against what you're focusing on. You're not focusing on value in those stores, you're focusing on price.
Brent, question waiting online from Natalia.
Okay. What do you think? Who is more interested in shopper marketing solutions, producer or retailer? Do they have the same solutions, and how it should be as the most right way? Again, I'm not going to say depends, but part of retailing is buying products from a supplier or a vendor. So you have to work together on these things. So you should be understanding, since at the end of the day, it's going to be the same shopper. They may happen to come to your store to buy the products, but they're buying the supplier's products. So more integration between the groups, and that's when the question is asked is which is more, they have to be working together. And I understand certain retailers may feel they have less, quote, power over the vendor versus other vendors would feel they have less power over the retailer. It shouldn't matter. It's back to the shopper. The shopper has to buy those products. So a vendor selling products to a retailer is a very short-term perspective. The vendor is selling their products through the retailer. So they both need to be equally involved in understanding shopper marketing. So once again, I'm not giving a straight answer on this, but the focus, if you truly believe in shopper marketing, the shopper in your store is also the vendor shopper. So you should have the same understanding or expectations or knowledge about that shopper.
Any more questions from the audience? No questions
read
from
the
my
Russian
family? No,
Excuse me.
just comments.
Do you mind? It's not a question, it's just a kind of suggestion. Usually we say it takes two to dance a tango, right? In this case, I think it's very important to give a shopper the possibility to interact with retailers somehow. For instance, you told us about the individual price. Did you tell us about individual price in your lecture right now?
I'm not sure what you mean by individual.
I mean, for instance, individual discounts rates and something like that.
Oh, okay. So you had special promotions for
Right.
specific customers.
Yeah.
Okay.
For instance, what do you think? Will it be useful for shopper marketing if a shopper will have a possibility to suggest a retailer, hello, I know that you sell, I don't know, some type of tires, for instance. I would like to buy this tire, but I don't like your price. They suggest my price. And what do you think? Will it help to build successful relations between shopper and retailer?
Excellent question. One of the things Walmart does is they have a price game. So if you bring in a flyer or a promotional for the same product, they will match that product. The downside always is then you're telling your customer or shopper that I'm okay with price being the only thing that's important. So I say you got to go back to the retailer saying, and in the dollar store, sure, that's fine. But if I want my shopper to always focus on price, then what am I providing that's of interest? So then they're going to tell someone that if you talk to them, they'll give you a lower price. And then they'll tell someone, and then the competitors will say, okay, well, I've got to have lower prices. You go into the death spiral of saying, I'm always focusing on price. You have to truly believe that the price you are setting for your products, for your customers, is of value. And yes, maybe you have a customer that buys a lot of things from you, and then you could have, and they say, it'd be great if we could have an offer on this. You can negotiate a value proposition, but going into saying, I want to give you 200 rubles versus the price you're saying is 225, that's a whole different model. And it's, if you've only got a few customers, few big customers, you may want to entertain that. But once you get into the pricing focus, and others are going to know about this, they're all going to want that and say, well, why shouldn't I get the same price? I mean, it's a different type of retail practice. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but you're going back to the old market philosophy, and you go to the central market and say, let's negotiate. And all you're focusing at the end of the day is, well, look, I got a great price. Well, I'm as a retailer should be providing you more than price. I should either have a unique selection of products or you get better service, and you should value that. And therefore, I'm surprised you're even asking me for a lower price, because you're almost insulting the retailer. I'm not saying customers won't do that.
Okay, do that.
Yeah. Online is an easier way to do that. I know Amazon has done that now. They can tweak their prices, not only daily, but how many times, say, did you look at the same product? They actually can tweak them up. So if you keep going to look at the same product online but don't buy it, surprisingly, you may come back one day and the price is a little lower or a little higher than the last time. Because they're getting to understand your buying behavior. A little harder in a traditional retail box.
Any more questions from the audience? Okay, looks like no questions, and we anyway have just wrap up our webinar. Thank you, Brent, for being with us tonight. And what else? For them, I could suggest only you can launch a SSE shopper club or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our webinar audience, and thank you for coming over tonight.